The first game back from the All-Star break, the Kings pull out a win, albeit more stressful than we would have liked it to be against the 11-win Spurs, but a win nonetheless. And of course, we had big performance from Domantas Sabonis and another triple-double. Don't want to take that for granted, and I'll get to that. But I think the most encouraging part of this game just continues to be the performance of De'Aaron Fox down the stretch of games. He took us home in this one when the Spurs got up 4 points pretty late in the fourth quarter after the Kings led for a lot of the game. The fourth quarter was not a good one for the Kings, but De'Aaron Fox put the team on his back and got us the win down the stretch like we saw him do a lot last season. And we saw it in the last game against Denver, where he scored the last 10 points for the Kings. A similar performance in this one, where he's making plays on both ends. He got back cut by Vassell on that one play, but somehow recovered for the massive block. But he just looked a lot more like the Fox of last season, where throughout the game he was super efficient in the paint, especially in the floater area and in the mid-range. And then down the stretch, he was just able to get to his spots and score enough to get the Kings the win, because I think there are obviously problems with the Kings defensively in this game, but if Fox is able to kind of recapture his clutch performances from last season in the last, 28 or however many games left in this season, no matter, how poor the Kings defense is at times or anything else, if Fox is playing that way, the Kings are just incredibly hard to beat. If they can keep it close down the stretch, Fox can just win games for this team down the stretch. And so I think that's huge. But obviously, we would like for the Kings to not be in that situation against bad teams like the Spurs. And obviously, sometimes bad teams with bad records, they're still obviously very talented. When you have, Victor Wembanyama, Devin Vassell, like they got talent, Keldon Johnson. And so every once in a while, it's going to happen where you're going to be in a dogfight with a team that you don't feel like you should be. And really the problem is just how often it happens with the Kings and how many bottom tier teams in the league the Kings have lost to, especially at home and against depleted teams. And so it's a worry. And the Kings just let the Spurs hang around the entire game. They had a lead for most of the game, a good, 5 point lead, it felt like, for most of it. And it didn't feel like the Kings were playing great, but it also didn't feel like the Kings were playing poorly. It just felt like, okay, they're playing well enough to have the lead, and probably by the end of it, if they keep playing like this, come out with the win. But if you don't, kill these teams, then you really never know what's going to happen in that fourth quarter, and we've seen that a lot. The one that comes to mind was the game against the Hornets at home, where the Kings had the lead, and then it's like last 5 minutes. Oh, where did the lead go? Oh, now all of a sudden we're losing by double digits somehow. And it felt like that's what could have happened in this game. And I think the biggest problem is the transition defense. I think there are moments where the Kings get up into a double digit lead. It's 11 points is the highest the Kings got. I think they got there twice in this game. But each time the Spurs would go on a run, and most of the time it was through transition plays. And that's either off Kings turnovers, which it felt like all the Kings turnovers, which they had 10 of, it felt like all of them were live ball turnovers where the Spurs were taking advantage the other way. The Spurs had 17 points off turnovers to the Kings 12. And, in ESPN stats, it says the Spurs have 13 fast break points. But I think that's probably a little deceiving. The Spurs got a lot more in transition that isn't necessarily fast break. I feel like there's been so many moments just throughout this season for the Kings where they'll be able to score and get baskets, and it feels like they should be extending the lead, but then they just won't get back in transition even after those made baskets, and it just happens time after time where the Kings aren't able to get back in transition and load up in the paint, and then it's just one pass forward, and then the Spurs or whatever team it's been this season will just get a free run at the rim in a one-on-one situation. And if you play one-on-one in the NBA, you're gonna lose most of the time. And so it leads to these moments where the Kings will score on 3, 4 straight possessions, but the lead won't go anywhere, right? It maybe increases a couple points, maybe 4 points, but you're not ever getting it into double digits, and you're never killing the other team off. And then all it takes is a dumb pass or a dumb 3-point attempt from Chris Duarte in transition that leads to a 3-on-1 the other way, and the Spurs score. And then you don't score finally on one. Spurs come back down, score. All of a sudden, you're right back where you started, or even worse. And so I feel like that transition defense, especially off made shots, but also just in general, I feel like that's the biggest reason why the Kings are in so many tight games with these bad teams. Another big talking point has been the Kings' lack of 3-point defense, and that continued in this game as the Spurs shot 44% from three. The Spurs, one of, if not the worst 3-point shooting team in the league, shooting 44%. And that's with, Victor Wembanyama going 1 for 6 and just hitting like one jumper the entire game. But there are just so many of these just dumb breakdowns, or guys helping when you just don't need to help, and not being able to recover. And so I thought it was a poor game from Kevin Huerter defensively. He was really good offensively, which is why he continued to play, but he was pretty bad when it comes to his off-ball defense. Barnes was really bad defensively. And then also you had the Spurs, and especially Devin Vassell, just being able to get to the rim pretty easily. And I do think the Kings, like, they talked a lot over the All-Star break about the 3-point defense. Like, you could tell Mike Brown was trying to hammer it into him, like, you got to be better guarding the 3-point line. And honestly, I think the problem was that then they did get concerned about the 3-point line, and then the Spurs just cut them to death, right to the rim. There were just so many of these back cuts going straight to the rim. Devin Vassell was killing us on those all night, but other guys as well. And I think Keegan's a good example where I thought Keegan's on-ball defense on Devin Vassell was really good. When he was just one-on-one against him, Keegan was staying in front of him. He wasn't letting him go anywhere. The problem wasn't on ball, though. The amount of times Devin Vassell would get open off the ball was pretty incredible. He went 13 for 18 with 32 points. He also had 7 assists. He was awesome, and we just couldn't contain him off the ball. Even on late in the fourth, De'Aaron Fox gets back cut by Devin Vassell for, like, not De'Aaron Fox specifically, but as a team. It felt like the 5th time all game that Devin Vassell got open on a back cut. And it's just, Fox making an incredible effort to be able to block that shot. But Keegan, his off-ball defense wasn't great. But it wasn't just him, because also Vassell coming around screens. And then Sabonis can't really help too far off Wembanyama, so it has to be someone else to step up. And I think a big problem was when the help would come, it would come from the strong side, and then it's just a wide open wing 3. And when the help wouldn't come from there, a lot of times whoever was stepping up, especially Harrison Barnes, when he was stepping up to try to contest the shot, well, he was either really late, or he wasn't just stepping far enough outside of the restricted area, and he was just stuck like right under the rim. And Harrison Barnes is not gonna deter many shots when he's just that, like, right under the rim. And then I think the last problem was, like, Domantas Sabonis was really good guarding Victor Wembanyama one-on-one, and he was forcing Wemby into tough shots, and every time Wemby took a jump shot, it was a victory for the Kings. I think his problem was one that I think we've seen a little bit more of recently, where he's struggling to guard the pick and roll. He's just allowing the opposing guards to get around him. And so he's got to do a better job of containing the guard and not letting them get around him straight to the rim, because once that guard gets around him, that just takes 2 defenders out of the picture, and the Kings are just never going to get a stop from that situation. So he's got to do a better job of containing the guards on the pick and roll. But then moving to the good parts of this game, which is just mostly on the offensive end. I mean, we scored 127 points. Sabonis, he had his flu game. He was doubtful yesterday coming into this game, but then he got upgraded to questionable. And once he got upgraded to questionable, it felt like it was pretty certain that he was going to play. I mean, this is a guy that just plays every single game. he was playing with a broken thumb last season. He only missed that one game because the splint wasn't ready for his thumb, or else he would have played. And so if he's getting upgraded to questionable with just an illness, like, he's going to play. And he did, and he dominated 33 minutes, so probably a little lower than it would have been if he wasn't sick. And he played in smaller stints in this one. We saw him come out early. The rotation got changed up, I'm assuming because of his illness. We saw Trey Lyles be the first sub into the game for Sabonis. Usually Sabonis is playing most of the first quarter, if not all of it. But usually it's most of the first quarter, and then, Fox will get subbed out in the middle, and then he'll come back in later in the first quarter. But that's not what we saw here. But you definitely couldn't tell that the guy was sick. I mean, he dominated Victor Wembanyama inside, and he dominated him on both ends, which was really good to see because, I mean, he just has so much strength on Wemby, and it feels like he's just the perfect counter to Wemby because he's a guy that is kind of used to having to use a lot of fakes to be able to score the ball because he's not the most vertically athletic guy, and so he's under threat of getting blocked a lot, and he has to use his body to be able to throw the shot blocker off balance and use fakes to be able to get them up in the air. And so that's why he's perfect against Wemby. That's why he's dominated against Chet. Just these thinner shot blockers, they don't really affect him very much. Wemby blocked him one time, and that one time it was a foul that got missed because he got hit on the arm. By the way, I don't know, I guess Wemby's just allowed to not go vertical because refs are just like so enamored with him. I mean, the fact that he only picked up one foul in this game is insane. But I mean, that's another thing. The refs in this game, they took the first quarter off, which honestly I was fine with. There were 0 fouls in the first quarter. It was kind of wild, but there were, a few fouls both ways that just went uncalled. So it was like, okay, I guess it's fine. But Sabonis, he wouldn't shoot jumpers in this game. He shot one in the fourth quarter. I don't know if he shot another jumper. He didn't take a three. Just everything was inside. It was very odd because normally he's taking a few jumpers. Like, he's not a high volume jump shooter, but he's going to take some. And so it was kind of odd to see him just taking no jumpers. Kind of annoyed me at points, but he went 11 for 15, 22 points, 11 assists, 11 rebounds. Had a poster dunk on Zach Collins, had a Euro step on Wemby, had him lost, blocked Wemby. He had all the highlights in this one. But also I was talking about the Spurs back cutting the Kings to death. Well, the Kings were kind of doing the same thing on the other end. You had Kevin Huerter, who was getting backdoor, and usually when Kevin Huerter has it going, he's going to get some of those backdoor cuts. He's really good at doing that, and when he has all that gravity off a few makes from three, it makes it really easy for him to back cut, and Sabonis is going to find him. And also when Kevin Huerter has it going, I mean, the two-man game between Sabonis and Huerter is just unstoppable. They work so well together. Sabonis knows right where to put the ball. He puts it far out in front of Huerter so Huerter can create all that space and maintain a sprint. And Sabonis is, creating space with the screen. He's also creating space with where he puts the ball, and then Huerter is able to get a very open look. And Huerter's been shooting really well as of late, but we just haven't seen high volume until this game where he went 5 for 8 and 8 for 14. Normally he was just, he would hit 2 for 3 or something like that. He just hasn't been getting a lot of shots lately, but he got going early, and the Kings kept running plays for him, and so he just kept knocking him down. And he also made some really nice plays. Like I was talking about, the two-man game with him and Sabonis, he was making some nice passes inside. And just overall a really good game offensively for him. And with him taking 14 shots, and of course Sabonis and Fox getting theirs, Keegan also taking 10 shots where he went 6 for 10. It meant less shots for Barnes. And so that's usually going to be the case where you're not going to have all 5 of the starters shooting high volume. But it was nice to see Keegan knock down a few threes because he had been struggling lately. And he also had that really great take to the rim, postering Zach Collins. Zach Collins getting postered twice within the span of like 2 minutes or something. I mean, that's always great to see. And I always love seeing Keegan getting aggressive towards the rim. And then Barnes went 2 for 5, and he had some nice moments. I thought his buckets were in at times where he was picking his spots well. And again, he's another guy that kind of like Sabonis. He's going to be able to navigate around a guy like Wemby because he's just used to navigating around shot blockers anyways. Because again, he's not going to be, going towards the rim with a lot of force. He's going to slow it down and put his body into a guy and score more from the floater area. And the Kings took advantage big time of the floater area, which was, of course, super important when you're going up against a guy like Wemby. I mean, Wemby, he almost went 5 for 5, 5 by 5, with 5 steals, 5 blocks, 19 points, 13 rebounds, and he just missed out on the assists where he had 4. But Fox had the floater going. You had Sabonis getting it done inside, but Barnes can get to that floater area, and then Malik Monk can get to that floater area and kill him from there and from the mid-range. The bench didn't look great in this game. I mean, some guys did, some guys didn't. You had Trey Lyles coming in for Domas early, and before I realized that it was probably due to illness, I was like, what are we doing here? Why is he coming in? And immediately the Kings start getting killed because they were settling from deep without Domas not getting inside. Even in transition, I mean, they were crowding each other in transition at the 3-point line. Like, someone's got to go to the rim. And so the non-Domas minutes didn't start off great, but I thought Fox did a pretty good job of settling things down and playmaking for others. And he was able to get into the post a lot to get to that mid-range or to the floater. But also he can pass from the post when he gets into the post there. And so I thought he had a pretty good playmaking game. I mean, other than, a couple of questionable passes where he's trying to like feed it inside, down low to Sabonis against Wemby. Like, no, don't do that. There were a few times where it's just like you got to learn you cannot be throwing these passes that you would normally throw, or even dribble the ball up the court how you would normally dribble the ball up the court against the length of Wembanyama. There's that play where Sabonis is just dribbling the ball up the court in transition like he normally does, and then just, out of nowhere, Victor's just massively long arms just reach around and tap the ball out. And it's those types of moments where it must be so frustrating to play against a guy like that because there's just no one else in the world that they've ever played against that can do that. It's like you train yourself to keep the ball in certain spots and be able to make certain passes to guys, and then just out of nowhere, the thing you've been doing your whole life where, it's been safe and you haven't turned the ball over, it hasn't got knocked away, it hasn't been in the reach of the defender. Now all of a sudden this dude with an 8-foot wingspan just comes out of nowhere and knocks the ball away. I mean, that must be hard to adapt to. And I mean, that's a big reason you see Wemby getting those 5 steals and the 5 blocks. It's like guys just don't know what they can and can't do around him. But I was talking about the bench. Trey Lyles coming in. Lyles, he had a rough game. Offensively, he was getting open for 3 and he just wasn't knocking him down. 1 for 5 from 3. Also missed a free throw. Barnes missed one of his free throws. You had Fox, after Vassell missed 2 free throws to give us crumble cookies, then Fox goes down and misses 2. Just have to mention the free throws. That's rough. But like Lyles, I thought, for the most part, he was making the right plays offensively and he just wasn't really knocking him down. But on the defensive end, he really struggled, especially against Keldon Johnson, where Keldon just put him in the post and it was just a no contest twice in a row. But yeah, a rough game for Lyles defensively. And the Kings realized that they need to go to Alex Len against Wemby. Can't play Lyles at the 5. I thought it was, a good idea at first where you try to space out the floor offensively and get Wemby away from the rim, but Lyles wasn't knocking down his threes, so that hurt that. But then they were just punching the Kings defensively because they were going small, so then Alex Len came in and played 14 minutes. And I thought Len was pretty solid. Fox kept trying to, feed Len inside, which, I get. Like, they were fine passes, but then, Wemby's just like over there, like, swat. Len trying to dunk on Wemby. No, that's not going to work. But I thought Len had solid impact, solid defensively around the rim. Like he protected the rim really well, and I thought Malik Monk, like him and Malik Monk, were really good in protecting the rim. Watching Malik Monk as a rim protector is always hilarious. I mean, the dude just comes flying out of nowhere to block these shots, and he had two blocks in this one. He's probably going to end up leading the team in blocks this season. And I thought the bench guys had some good defensive moments. Like you had Davion playing 11 minutes. I don't really understand why he's playing over Keon Ellis. Just because when you look at the Kings' problems, it's like 3-point shooting defense. Well, we got Keon Ellis, this long defender. Like, get him out there so he can defend the 3-point line. Like, that's what Davion's not great at. But Davion did have good defensive moments where he's getting out to shooters. And I thought him and Duarte both did that well. There was a play where Chris Duarte, who played 20 minutes, he closed out really hard on a shooter, but then was also able to keep the shooter in front of him off the dribble. And so that was really impressive. But then there were also some other plays from Davion where he's coming from the help side, like against Jeremy Sohan, and forced a tough layup, and Sohan missed it. And then I talked about Malik Monk coming from that help side to be able to block shots and protect the rim. And Duarte also knocked down his first two threes, which is obviously really important for him. And then he had that attempt in the fourth quarter where it's just in transition, contested three. I mean, if he makes it, the crowd's going crazy, but just why? Just slow it down, because then it led to the Spurs going right back the other way and scoring. But other than that, Duarte was pretty good. Davion, though, offensively was really rough. Just couldn't score the ball, wasn't really making the right decisions with the ball. He just clogs up the offense, which again is why I want Keon Ellis out there. But then looking at Malik Monk, Malik did really well, like I mentioned, going to his floater, but also just that mid-range shot that he's made his own. Starting the season off, he was just on fire from three. And that was a big part of his offensive game. Just coming in, he would immediately chuck a three. Heat check the second he came into the game. Now his 3-point shot throughout the season has cooled down, and so he's scoring in other ways. And he had 21 in this one, was also a defensive presence, both around the rim, but also had a couple steals, made clutch free throws. That was big. And so an all around really solid game from Malik Monk. And then, of course, I got to mention it because it's just been a trend all season. Mike Brown losing a challenge. And do I think he should have lost the challenge? I mean, probably not, but it was close enough where you're like, just why did he challenge it? Especially up 8 in the third quarter. Where he challenges the play where Davion tries to, kind of, it wasn't exactly a pull the chair moment, but kind of like that, where he's just trying to back up because the defender's coming in to try to create contact. And they called Davion for illegal leg contact and then the swipe down, which I just, no, just no, that's not a foul. But mainly because Blake Wesley is just lowering his shoulder and Davion's backing up and is just completely out of the way, and Wesley's unnaturally just leaning straight into the defender, totally off course from where he was going to the rim, so it shouldn't be a foul. But, another challenge lost. Another game, another challenge lost. Hopefully he's just saving all of his good challenges for the playoffs, I guess. I don't know. We also had the refs missing a take call foul where Fox obviously gets intentionally fouled in transition, and somehow it wasn't a take foul. Like, that was the definition of a take foul, and somehow it wasn't. That was odd. And then it's nice to have a guy on the bench now in Mason Jones who's just going to get hyped over absolutely everything the entire game, knowing that there's zero chance he gets put in the game unless it's garbage time. He's a very fun guy to watch on the sidelines, just running up and down the sidelines. There's one point where, out of the corner of my eye, I see some King. Looks like he's going to check in at the table. I look up, I'm like, that's Mason Jones. He's just getting hyped, like running like all the way up the bench. Definitely he probably doesn't have the games requirement, but if he did, he would be first team all vibes for sure. This is the type of game where I feel like if it wasn't the kind of normal for the Kings this season, I would be like, oh, this is, we got the win, but it's bad signs for, if we're playing better teams. But no, because this team is probably just going to come out against a better team now in the Clippers and actually look better than they did in this one, just because that's how this team goes for some reason. So it's just good that we got the win. That's the thing that matters. But moving on to the game on Sunday against the Clippers, and then we have a game, and that one is in LA, and then we have a game the following day at home against the Heat. The Clippers, a team that we've gotten blown out by twice this season so far. One of them was at home, one of them was on the road. The Clippers, a team that just doesn't really lose at home very much, but the Kings are a good road team, so not too worried about that part. Those games against the Clippers, though, they feel like an eternity ago. So it's like I gotta rack my brain. What went wrong in those games? But then I remember, oh yeah, like everything went wrong in those games, and they were awful to watch. Just playing zero defense, not being able to guard Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, the usual suspects. James Harden hitting every shot I think that was the second game where he was on the team. But I mean, I think the main thing is, the Kings just have to be more connected defensively and then just play with pace, just up and down. This is not a young Clippers team. You have to push the pace against them and get some easy buckets. And when the Kings are playing at an extremely fast pace, that is when they are at their best. And so I think the Kings' best shot is turning this game into a track meet, because I don't think we're probably not going to win in just a half-court game against the Clippers. But anyways, that is it for this episode of the Rule Report. I will be back on Sunday night to recap the game against the Clippers. So I'll see you guys then. Peace.